Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, based on the time and the place that you are joining us to this first panel of a series of webinars that we are going to hold today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, which is going to pay attention to the elections in Iran. As you might know, we are going to have the elections in a week, and the new administration, the new government will be picked by the people of Iran. We have about 60 million people eligible to vote, and it's one of the most important elections through the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so we have decided actually to hold this series of panels, webinars, in order to help the foreigners learn more about the elections in Iran, because the Islamic Republic structure is something unique, and of course the elections are held like many other countries. The direct votes are usually used for elections in Iran, and many things that we are going to discuss. The interesting point is that next week, on Friday, some cities in Iran are going to hold up to 4 elections, different elections, on the same day, and these are things that we can talk about today. So the panels that we are going to hold to have are in 3 parts. First of all, tonight we are going to discuss everything about the way the elections are held, the bodies and organizations involved in that, either holding them, monitoring them, and such things. Different elections that we have in Iran, from presidentship to I don't know, the city council and such things. And the only things that might be interesting for a foreigner to know about the elections, as far as our speakers can help us, or the questions that would happen. We are supposed to have 2 key speakers, Dr. Sam Torabi, who has joined us, and we are waiting for Sheikh Mohammed Mahdi Taeb. Unfortunately, not here yet. I think he's facing some problem, of course. The way would be like, the way we are going to hold the panel is that we are going to discuss everything. First, the presentation would be with the presenters, with the speakers. I think each speaker would speak about 10 to 20 minutes, maybe, based on the topic and their lectures. And after that, we are going to have the Q&A, of course. For the friends that are going to join us or have joined us on the Clubhouse, this panel is mainly held on our website, deeplohouse.ir/webinar, and the main platform is there actually. So we are doing everything there, but we are broadcasting it on the Clubhouse as well, in order for other listeners to join us and maybe enjoy the discussions that we are going to have. And of course, after that, for the Q&A, we will also have the Clubhouse guests as well, of course, after the respective guests that are joining us on the this platform on the website. And after that, maybe we can continue the discussion on the Clubhouse after the panel is closed here. So it depends on the participants, of course. So I would like to invite Dr. Torabi to please turn the microphone and the webcam if possible. Dr. Torabi, can we have your webcam as well?
Sure.
I would appreciate that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Can you see me?
Not yet. Yes. Yeah, of course. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you, of course. I would like you to introduce yourself in person because I'm not sure I can introduce you correctly and perfectly. So I would like to ask you yourself to uh,
Sure.
do the job. And before that, are you going to join us on the clubhouse as well or not?
Yeah, inshallah. If I'm not too tired.
How about now?
No, I can't because I have Android. I have to go on with VPN, and then that
All right. Yes.
interferes with my internet connection.
Okay. I'm going to use my own cell phone to actually broadcast. Okay. The floor is yours, and we are listening to you. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn off my microphone and webcam.
Well, thank you again for inviting me. I was very happy to see that you have started this new organization, this new think tank, which is a very nice thing, and I wish you success with that. And basically, I think we have to understand elections in Iran, in the Islamic Republic, in the historic context. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to talk about it if you don't understand the historic context. And the historic context is one where you basically had the Iranian nation over the course of about 100 years, maybe a little bit more, attempting to move away from an absolute monarchy and move towards some form of either constitutional monarchy or a republican form of government. Of course, the most famous aspect of that history is the Constitutional Revolution, which occurred at the beginning of the 20th century. It was for the first time that we see that there are limits put on the power of the monarch of the time. For the first time, we have the establishment of the Majlis, of the parliament. And something that very few people know is that the Guardian Council actually was first initiated in Iranian history during the Constitutional Revolution. So the Guardian Council actually comes from there. It's not something that was first initiated after the Islamic Revolution and the establishment of the Islamic Republic. And as today, the job of the Guardian Council at that time was to make sure that any laws that are passed by the Majlis at that time do not go against Sharia and Islamic law, which was considered then and is considered today to be the overriding and supreme law in Iran. So whatever laws are passed by the parliament, they cannot contravene Sharia, and the way that is determined is through the process in which the Guardian Council is the main forum in which that happens. Also, there are other aspects of it. Of course, all of it ultimately goes back to the leadership. So the leadership can give what's called ahkam hukumati or ahkam vela'i, wherein the final determination is made by the leader, whoever the leader is at that time. Imam Khomeini at the beginning of the establishment of the Islamic Republic, and today Ayatollah Khamenei. So in that context, we have to understand that what we see today is not simply something that happened 42 years ago, or that happened, after the establishment or after the Islamic Revolution. We also then have another milestone in this development. Of course, what happened, just to be clear about what actually happened historically, what happened is that you had the Constitutional Revolution. You had, for a very brief period of time, the ability in Iran to have some sort of a situation where you could have different voices other than the monarchs and other than the monarchy being able to establish laws and to govern the country. This was immediately overthrown by the British, mainly with the installment of Reza Pahlavi, and the beginning of the Pahlavi dictatorship. This went on, and then afterwards we had his son taking over during World War II. And then in the early 50s, we see again a blossoming of some sort of a limitation of the monarchical rule, with the election of the nationalist Mossadegh government, the government that nationalized the oil industry. And again, it is overthrown in a coup d'etat, this time by the US, who had replaced the British as the main power. Actually, through the coup, that was the main event in which the Americans replaced the British as the foreign power which sought to influence Iran. So this went on again for about a little bit more than 20 years, from the early 50s to the late 1970s. And in that time, the issue came up. The issue had always been constitutional monarchy. So this is a very important difference between what happened in the revolution with the other events that had happened prior to that. Prior to that, whether it was the constitutional revolution or whether it was during the government of Dr. Mossadegh, the issue had always still been constitutional monarchy. And that's ultimately how they were able to also overthrow the Mossadegh government, was because the king, even though he had fled and had gone to Italy, still had some form of sovereignty over the country, and they were able to use that in order to bring him back. Of course, we know after that we have things like Savak and the tortures and the executions that happened during the second Pahlavi rule. And of course, then what happened is we have the beginnings of the revolution. And in the beginnings of the revolution, you see that before you actually have the establishment of the Islamic Republic, you have the Shah again fleeing the country and giving the prime minister of that time, Bakhtiyar, allowing him to rule the country again as a constitutional monarch, under the setting of a constitutional monarchy, him being the monarch who wasn't in Iran, but Bakhtiyar, who was the prime minister. And this is where we see that Imam Khomeini is very adamant that he does not accept that as a solution to the problems and to the revolution. This was something that was attempted as a way of neutralizing the revolutionary movement in Iran at that time. But it is something that Imam Khomeini is vehemently opposing and insisting on a republic, and not only on a republic, but on an Islamic republic. Now, some people might say, well, why an Islamic republic? Well, again, the Republican form in itself is something that is not necessarily, it can have various forms. It can take different shapes, as we've seen throughout modern history or even ancient history when you had different kinds of republics, for example, during the Greek city-states or during the Roman Republic. So a republic in itself doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a secular or a non-religious. You have things that are called people's republics. We can argue about whether they are republics or not, but these were the republics that were established in terms of, for example, China or other communist and revolutionary states. And so the issue is really, if that society, if the Iranian society is Islamic, then clearly it makes sense to have a form of government that is congruent with and compatible with the dominant religion, culture, beliefs of the population. And so this is really the basis of having an Islamic Republic. It would have been just as problematic to replace the monarchy with a forced secularized republic in Iran, because the majority of the people would not have accepted that as a form of government. We had forced secularization during the late Pahlavi era, and of course that's actually one of the reasons we actually had a revolution. One of the main reasons why there was a revolution is because the majority of the people in Iran did not want to be secularized and did not want to have a society in which their basic beliefs, which is Islam, is not considered and is marginalized. So we have then in the late 70s the establishment of the Islamic Republic. Now it's very interesting because if you look at the fiqh, if you look at the Sharia and the Islamic legal aspect of it, you have the concept of Bilad Faqih, which is the way that in Shia Islam, when there is no prophet or when there's no imam, no infallible imam, which is the case currently, with whom does sovereignty lie? And the answer, according to Sharia, according to Shia 12 Imami Jafari fiqh, is that it lies with the jurisprudence, those who are knowledgeable of Islamic law, because that's the whole point of ruling, is to implement Islamic laws, which is the basis for having justice in a society. Otherwise, it would be man-made laws and random laws and whatever the ruler decides he wants to do, and the next day could be something else. So according to Shia fiqh, when you are at a time when you're not in the presence of a prophet or an imam, sovereignty the right to establish a government is with the jurisprudence. And there are different